He got down on his knees, right there in the kitchen at 11 p.m., with tears streaming down his face. He promised he'd change. He promised this time would be different. He told her she was his whole world, that life without her simply didn't make sense. He brought up every good memory they had. He reminded her of the trip they took last summer, the inside jokes, the plans they'd made together. He was putting everything on the table. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes dry. And 3 days later, she was gone. That's not a movie scene. That's a pattern. A very specific, very painful pattern that plays out in relationships every single day. And if you're watching this right now, you've either lived it firsthand or you're terrified you're about to. Either way, you need to understand what actually happened in that kitchen, because it wasn't what most people think. Here's what everyone gets wrong. They think the moment she says, "I'm done," is the moment the relationship ended. It didn't. That moment happened weeks, months, sometimes years earlier. What you witnessed at the end was just the announcement. The decision was made in silence, long before she said a single word out loud. Understanding that difference isn't just important, it's everything. So let's break down exactly how this works, why it happens, and what you can actually do about it. There's a psychological concept researchers call emotional detachment processing. It doesn't look like a dramatic event. It's quiet, gradual. It's a woman slowly withdrawing her emotional investment from the relationship, like a bank account that keeps getting debited with nothing being deposited. She's not doing it consciously at first. It starts as self-protection. Think about this for a second. When a woman first starts feeling unhappy in a relationship, what does she typically do? She talks about it. She brings it up. She says things like, "I feel like we've been really distant lately," or "I need more from you." Emotionally. She's literally telling you something is wrong. That's not nagging. That's not drama. That is her actively trying to fix what she sees breaking. And here's where most men make the critical mistake. They either get defensive and turn it into an argument, dismiss it as her being emotional, or they make a vague promise to do better, without actually changing anything in a meaningful way. So, she brings it up again next week. He responds the same way. She tries again the week after that. Same result. Maybe different words, but same outcome. And here's what nobody talks about. She might do this for months. Some women do it for years. Because she loves him. Because she's invested. Because she genuinely believes that if she can just explain it the right way, he'll finally get it. But then something shifts. She stops bringing it up. And most men think, finally, she's calmed down. We're good now. No, you are not good. That silence isn't peace. That silence is her making a decision. She's not less upset. She's just redirected that energy inward into a quiet internal process of asking herself, is this actually going to change? And the answer she keeps arriving at is no. Dr. John Gottman, who has spent decades studying what makes relationships succeed or fail, found that women are emotionally done with a relationship long before they leave it physically. On average, women contemplate leaving for around 2 years before they actually walk out. 2 years. While you thought the storm had passed and everything had settled down, she was running a slow, painful internal calculation about her future. So, what do you do with that information? You stop interpreting silence as resolution. When the complaints stop, but the warmth also disappears. When she goes from frustrated and emotional to just flat and neutral, that is not progress. That is the freeze before the final move. The time to take action is before the complaints stop, not after they stop. Because after they stop, you're already in borrowed time. Now let's get to the core of this. Why does nothing you say matter once she's made her decision? Why can't a genuinely heartfelt conversation reach her? Why do the most emotional, most sincere speeches in the world bounce right off? This isn't cruelty on her part. There's real psychology behind it. When someone has been emotionally withdrawing for months, they go through what therapists call psychological uncoupling. It's a process, not a moment. She has already grieved the relationship. She has already sat with the loss of what you two could have been. She's already imagined building a life without you, already felt the fear of that, already cried through it, and come out the other side. She's talked to her closest friends, she's journaled about it, she's replayed every significant moment trying to figure out where it went wrong. By the time she's sitting across from you, telling you it's over, she is on the other side of grief that you haven't even begun yet. Let that sink in for a moment. Your panic is fresh. Your pain is raw and immediate and completely overwhelming, but hers has been processed over months. She has already done the emotional work of losing this relationship while still being in it. And that asymmetry, that massive gap between where she is emotionally and where you suddenly find yourself, is exactly why your words, no matter how sincere, no matter how perfectly chosen, land on someone who has already moved through the territory you're just now entering. It's like showing up to a fire with a glass of water after the house has already burned down completely. She's not being cold. She's not being heartless. She's being finished. There's a difference. And here's the part that stings the most. The promises, the grand gestures, the tears streaming down your face. All of that actually reinforces her decision. Not because she's cruel, but because it confirms her deepest fear about the relationship, which is that you are only capable of this level of emotional openness and awareness when you're terrified of losing her. Not when she was quietly telling you something was wrong for 2 years. Not when she was making bids for your attention that you kept missing. Only now, at the very end, when the stakes are highest, does this version of you show up. And she's seen this before, this exact pattern. Maybe with you, maybe in past relationships. She knows how it ends. So what do? You stop performing. If she has genuinely decided to leave and the relationship is over, the most dignified thing you can do is accept it with grace. Not because you don't love her, not because you're indifferent to losing her, but because grasping and begging and making promises at the exit stage isn't love. It's panic wearing love's clothing. And after years of paying close attention to you, she absolutely knows the difference. Here's where it gets specific, because understanding the actual stages she goes through before she leaves gives you a map of the relationship. And if you can honestly identify where you currently are on that map, you can potentially change the outcome before it's too late. Stage 1 is what I call the signal stage. She is fully invested in this relationship. She's bringing up problems consistently. She might be emotional, frustrated, even angry at times. A lot of men misread this as drama or oversensitivity. That is a catastrophic misreading. Anger in a relationship means attachment. A woman who is fighting, crying, bringing up problems over and over again is a woman who still wants to fix it. She cares enough to fight. The signal stage is the window. It's the most critical stage, and it's the one where genuine change has the most power. Stage 2 is the test stage. She's starting to pull back slightly, and she's watching to see whether you notice. She might be a little less available than usual, a little more focused on her own world. She's not playing games the way people assume. She's gathering evidence. Her core question in this stage is, does he actually see me when I'm not right in front of him, demanding his attention? Men who fail the test stage almost always fail it, not by doing the wrong thing, but by doing nothing, by simply not noticing. Stage 3 is the detachment stage, and this is the most dangerous one because it looks peaceful. She's stopped bringing up problems. She's stopped testing. She's civil and sometimes even warm, but there's a glass wall between you that you can't quite name. You feel like things have finally stabilized. What's actually happening is she's emotionally releasing the relationship. That calm isn't her holding on. It's her letting go. This is the stage most men wake up from confused, saying, I had no idea anything was wrong. Stage 4 is the exit stage. The decision has been made. She may stay physically present for weeks or even months because of practical realities, finances, a shared lease, children, logistics. But mentally and emotionally, she departed during stage 3. This is the stage where no conversation changes anything. You are talking to someone who has already said her internal goodbye, even if the words haven't been spoken aloud yet. Be completely honest with yourself about which stage you're in right now. If you're in stage 1 or 2, you have genuine opportunity, but it requires actual behavioral change, not just new language. Words are the currency of stage 1. Consistent action over time is the currency of stages 2 and 3. By stage 4, neither one works. The most productive thing left at that point is a clear-eyed understanding of what you do differently, so you carry different habits into the next relationship. Most men believe relationships end because of the big dramatic moments, the major fights, the betrayals, the obvious turning points. Research consistently tells a different story. Relationships are almost always lost in the accumulation of small, unremarkable moments, the micro-dismissals, the times you were physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely. Here's a concrete picture of how it actually happens. She comes home and starts telling you about something frustrating that happened at work. You're half listening, your eyes still on your phone, and you say, "Yeah, that sucks," without even glancing up. That single moment is harmless, but if that's the pattern, if she consistently feels like she's narrating her life into a void rather than sharing it with a partner, those moments accumulate, and they accumulate silently. No single fight, no dramatic confrontation, just a slow, steady buildup of evidence that she is not genuinely valued. Psychologists refer to these small reaching out moments as emotional bids. When someone shares a story, makes a joke, points out something interesting, or even sighs heavily in your direction, they are making a bid for connection. You can turn toward it, turn away from it, or turn against it. Research from Gottman's lab found that couples in stable, happy relationships turn toward each other's bids over 80% of the time. Couples heading toward separation turn toward each other less than 33% of the time. Not because of how they handled conflict, because of how they handled ordinary Tuesday evenings. Here's what most men genuinely don't understand. She was not asking for perfection. She wasn't waiting for grand romantic gestures or dramatic declarations. She was asking to feel like her presence in your life was something you actively appreciated rather than passively assumed. She wanted to feel seen on a random Wednesday. She wanted you to bring up something she'd mentioned in passing a week ago, just to show you were actually listening. She wanted to feel like you were happy to be in the room with her, not just comfortable, but actually glad. And the painful reality is that a lot of men don't fully grasp what they had until they can feel it leaving. Not because they didn't love her, but because they treated love like a fact rather than a practice. They established it early in the relationship, and then assumed it would sustain itself on the strength of its own history. It doesn't work that way. Love in a long-term relationship is less like a monument you build once and more like a garden that needs tending every single day. Let's say you're watching this and you already know. The decision has been made and it isn't reversible. Maybe she's already told you. Maybe the energy in the apartment has changed in a way you can feel but can't quite describe. Maybe you just know. Here's what you should not do. Don't flutter with messages at all hours. Don't show up unannounced trying to force a conversation. Don't write the long emotional letter at 2 a.m. Don't ask mutual friends to speak on your behalf or tell her what she's giving up. None of these approaches save relationships at this stage. What they do is burn the remaining goodwill, confirm her fears about your emotional stability, and make the exit process significantly more painful for both of you. Here's the counterintuitive move. Give her the cleanest, most respectful exit you can. Not because you don't love her, but because love at this stage looks like dignity, not desperation. The man who is able to say, "I understand and I genuinely wish you well," even while quietly devastated, is the man who leaves a permanent impression of character. That matters. Not as a strategy to win her back. It matters because it's who you are. And then do the step that almost nobody does. Sit down and genuinely try to understand how it got here. Not to assign blame, not to build a case, but with real open curiosity. Where did the pattern start? When did you stop turning toward her bids? At what point did comfort quietly replace effort? What did you believe about relationships that turned out to be wrong? That kind of honest reflection is not weakness. It's the only thing that actually prevents the same story from playing out again with someone new. Here is what all of this comes down to. The man who only shows up fully, emotionally, attentively, wholeheartedly, in the moment he's about to lose her, has fundamentally misunderstood what a relationship actually requires. And it's worth saying clearly, this is not purely a moral failure. Most men were never explicitly taught this. They were taught to provide, to protect, to be strong and steady and not overly emotional. What they were almost never taught is how to be genuinely present, how to recognize and respond to emotional bids, how to maintain a relationship through consistent small actions rather than occasional large ones. The woman who leaves isn't leaving because she stopped caring. She's leaving because she spent months or years caring deeply and eventually ran out of evidence that she was cared for in return in the specific ways she needed. And when she finally walks out that door, she is more certain than you have likely ever been about anything in your life. Because she didn't make that decision impulsively. She made it slowly, painfully, and with complete thoroughness. By the time she says it out loud, every argument has already been considered, every alternative has already been weighed, and every remaining hope has already quietly faded. No speech reaches that. No promise touches it. No gesture reverses it. So, if you're watching this and something landed, if a moment in this video made you think about someone specific or a pattern you recognize in yourself, don't let that feeling pass without doing something with it. Don't wait for the signal stage complaints to stop before you start listening. Don't wait until the apartment gets quiet before you start showing up. Don't wait until you're on your knees in the kitchen before you become the version of yourself that she's been quietly hoping for. The relationship worth saving is still right in front of you. The version of you capable of saving it already exists. That's the work, and you already know it's worth doing.